talking just about data today. On Discovery B, which you've seen these, but I'm just putting them out. Your kids did really, really well in base 10. All the grades gone. The blue improved, because that was one of the weaker areas last time. Informational text, writing, and language. So, kudos. Now we're going to talk about what is the purpose of using data to kind of, why do we take all these tests and do all of this? What do you think in your classroom? What's the purpose?
So they can master the subject.
Okay.
So, like if I look at my data and I see they did poorly in geometry, and maybe that's because I haven't introduced it, or maybe that's because they haven't even seen it yet, but I know I need to like touch on that subject.
Okay.
And introduce it to them like through like a mini lesson or through like small groups or anything, but then I see that as like a struggling area rather than maybe some of the other areas.
Okay. Discovery, there's not an exact correlation between Discovery and Iowa, but we know if we can get our kids kind of in what Discovery calls proficient, then it'll translate well on Discovery. We don't exactly know what that correlation is, but so thinking about like our year end goals in Iowa, how do you think Discovery helps us kind of track that?
Well, I think we can kind of see how students start off the year in Discovery, like how we see how they start off the year in Iowa. And then we can kind of pinpoint things that they really need to focus on. So then when they get to that final Iowa test, then they've kind of seen that and they've been introduced to it, and then they know that they can do it. So in that final one, it'll show how much growth they had between the two.
Okay. I like that growth. Pop quiz, what are our school goals?
I know that NCE points. 10, 7. I knew.
Okay, so 7 in reading, and first grade's a little different because in all of the schools we kind of see this drop, and so that's why like last year it wasn't on your evaluation. This year probably won't be on your evaluation, but we can still kind of chart and see like how our kids are doing. So I want to go in and I want to look at the growth data between test 1 and test 2. And so this is reading and this is math from test 1 this year to test 2 this year. The blue line is the Jubilee average on both of them.
Yeah.
So looking at reading, because that's kind of our main focus this academic year, what do you notice about your Grafton reading? It's like there are no kid names on it. Just like, what do you notice about your dots?
A lot of them are below average or right at the average.
Okay.
Almost all of them.
Okay. So what does that make you think?
We need to work a lot on reading.
But speaking of just about growth, what does this make you think about your growth compared to the growth of the network schools as a whole?
Well, I guess if I have kids who like are lower, then I have that opportunity to push them and show them, and that'll show a great growth for them, especially if they're super, super low like this one. If I can get them even to that line, that shows like phenomenal growth with that specific person.
Right. It becomes growth rate. It doesn't really have anything to do about, I mean, it does go back to mastery, but it's not like, have they mastered this standard? It's more overall,
how well are they doing
growing
in that
overall? Yeah. Right. So it's rate of learning. So this is test 1 to test 2. And so Daniel Salgavio, he's been hired by the JSO to like do all this data stuff. So he's put together some graphs that compare how your first grade class last year did and how your first grade class this year is doing.
Okay.
So if you had to guess, do you think thinking of growth.
Yeah. I would say we haven't done as much as we did last year.
Okay. Why do you think your growth rates? And it's not necessarily that you haven't done as much. It's that your growth rates are slower.
I guess I would just I always have the end in mind. So my most recent is the end from my class last year and how much they grew.
Right.
And so I just feel like maybe the class this year hasn't done quite as much growth as we did last year.
Okay.
But that was a full year ago, and I may not be, remembering it.
Classes happen since then. But let me find. That's the Jubilee. That's math.
I want it to be better, but
okay. So this is our chart that Daniel made for, and you see everybody, so just pretend you don't. I should have blocked them out, but showing growth between test 1 and test 2 last year and growth between test 1 and test 2 this year. So you're exactly right in that it is a slower growth rate than it was last year.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with first grade, like there's this magic light that seems to come on around Christmas where like all of a sudden they kind of come on and get it, and like third quarter progresses much faster. They mature. Third quarter is also very, very like heavy in content, so they'll be getting more stuff. So this is all just snapshot, but according to the data, it is a slower growth rate. Now, what do you think about compared to the rest of the network and all the other first graders out there?
I saw what they did on the first test compared to the other ones.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm assuming and looking at that, showing a slower growth rate, I'm going to assume I'm still at the very bottom.
I don't think it's not very bottom, and it's not.
I was at the very bottom on one of them. They scored they scored the poorest in the network on one of them for the first test.
In the network. We are, but that's okay. This is an opportunity.
I'm looking for that fourth test when we score higher than everybody else.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And it will come because you are a great teacher. And I have no doubt about that. And in looking at your data plan, which is what we'll switch to now, you have some good things in place. Do you want to talk through your data plan?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm focusing more on reading because math is kind of in a good place. Plus, reading is our big yearly focus. One, super kudos. Your entire class has taken AR tests, and you keep on them about that independent reading. And you'll see part of the challenge with first grade books is they're not very complex. But again, kind of about this time in the year, the books start to get more complex. So they'll be practicing more of these skills in their books, and you'll just it'll speed up.
Mm-hmm.
But
I noticed there's a few of them who can read like those higher level books, and those are great.
Mm-hmm.
But I have noticed a good improvement, and I think it's solely from AR and reading those books, and some of my super low students who couldn't even read a book at the beginning of the year, and I'm hearing them read through this book. And those AR books are making a difference.
They feel success because they've passed a test and their flowers growing and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's interesting, like your informational text scores were great. It was literature that's starting to have a little bit of a drop off. So why do you think?
Maybe they're used to the curriculum books of Super Kids, and they can almost kind of predict or make up what the correct answer is for those. But then when they see a different type of story that's still like literature, they can't determine the answer from the text, because instead they were guessing before to get the right answer. Now they actually have to find it. And so I think they're having trouble like going back to the text and finding
I think you have a really good point with that, because like Super Kids grows with them. So they had Super Kids and they're used to that and the kids and everything. So I think that predictability of they can guess and get it, whereas with a brand new book. So thinking just of that, like how could you kind of course correct in the classroom?
In the classroom, what I've been doing is making up my own questions. So Super Kids like gives you questions. So then I make up my own questions in my head. Just as I'm going along, I may think, that's a great question. I'm going to answer, or I'm going to ask that. And my kids actually have to think about it. It's not a guessing question.
Right.
It'll be like a specific number of something or a specific answer, color, or whatever.
So like those text recall questions.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Do you like script those out ahead of time, or just like as you're reading it, you just kind of go, "Oop, hey, here I can ask a question." Okay.
Both.
All right.
Also, using Moby Max, I think has been like a fun thing.
Good.
And it's helped with phonics for maybe some of my lower ones who are having trouble with those sounding out. And they love it. So it's been real fun.
Your students of concern were Caden and Kimora.
Yeah.
And Kimora's, we talked about her being like a motivation problem.
Hers is getting, I think she's almost like regressing in a way. And I think it has come everything to do with like home. She's not sleeping at home. She's not getting all this stuff, and then she can't function at school.
Is the drama with her aunt and her mom and that kind of stuff worked out?
I have no idea. No. And she stays with mom on the weekends, stays up all night, doesn't sleep, comes to school, falls asleep in class. She falls asleep writing.
Do you see a benefit at all in calling mom and aunt in and having them sit down in a conference, or do you think that'll, because they don't have the best relationship, right?
I don't know. I don't think so. No, I don't think so, because there was some like...
Right. I think in January we probably need to have a conference with aunt, because aunt still has her during the week, and with mom to tell them the exact same information of, these are the concerns we're having about her, this is where she's weak, here's what we're planning on working with her. But
and I've been in constant contact with her aunt, like telling her her grades are suffering because she's not getting sleep. This is happening because of this. And she'll even write me a note like, hey, today might not be a good day, FYI. She might be, and yeah, so
okay. And so then we did a quick little like 3-week plan to get us up to now. How has the progress been on this?
I think it's been okay. It's a little hard sometimes during small group and everything to fit in my math and my reading. So I've kind of tried with my small groups to maybe tweak it a little bit. And so I've decided to maybe do a little bit of math one week and then a little bit of reading another week.
Okay.
Instead of trying to do both.
Okay.
So what I did this week was like try to kind of like match it with title. So if they're doing math and title, I've been working on math in small groups.
Okay.
And some of my other ones I'll put on like Moby Max or they do the extra math or things like that. I don't know how much I like that, because then they're not getting any reading.
Okay.
But it's
second semester. We're going to sort of switch our reading instructional focus, and we're going to do guided reading. Do you know anything about guided reading?
I mean, I know what guided reading is.